Hello, my name is Kathy Branch, Special Advisor, Small Business Administration. Welcome to today's Fireside Chat celebrating National Small Business Week with three incredible guests working both at SBA and in the private industry to invest in and uplift small businesses here in the United States. Today, we are joined by Bibi Hidalgo, SBA Associate Administrator for Government Contracting and Business Development, Mark Madrid, SBA Associate Administrator for Entrepreneur Development, and Paxton Baker, minority owner of Washington Nationals and lifelong entrepreneur. We're excited to have the three of you here with us during National Small Business Week to discuss the work that each of you and your offices are doing to expand access and opportunity for Black, Latino, and other minority business owners to increase equity both in the federal government and in the private sector or the private marketplace. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and this conversation will hopefully shed more light on what we are currently doing and what more we can do to invest in firms around the country. But before I begin, I would like to give a little background on each of our guests. I'll start off first with Bibi Hidalgo. Ms. Hidalgo is the Associate Administrator for Government Contracting and Business Development in the United States Small Business Administration. Ms. Hidalgo served as the SBA Government Contracting Policy Lead for the Byron Harris Transition Team. In 2014, Ms. Hidalgo and her brother Patrick Hidalgo co-founded Future Partners, LLC, which advised Fortune 500 corporate executives on procurement and minority business strategy and created a model for how to facilitate significant opportunities for both. Prior to that, she and her brother served in the White House, during which time she managed a government-wide initiative with all 24 cabinet agencies to position the federal government to meet the congressional 23% small business goal out of a $400 billion contracting budget for the first time in a decade. One of her proudest moments was serving as the assistant coach of her son's CYO basketball team when they won second place in their division. Miss Hidalgo dedicates her work to the memory of her brother Patrick, who passed away suddenly at the age of 41 in March of 2020. Next, we have Mr. Madrid. Mark Madrid is the Associate Administrator for the Office of Entrepreneur Development at the United States Small Business Administration. In this role, Mr. Madrid leads the SBA Technical Assistant Arm with National Resource Network, including Small Business Development Centers, Women Business Centers, SCORE, and the Office of Entrepreneurship Education. Previously, Mr. Madrid served as CEO of Latino Business Action Network, focused on strengthening America through funding and supporting United States Latino entrepreneur research and education impact programs at Stanford University. Before his chief executive nonprofit roles, Mr. Madrid held a senior executive career in banking that began on Wall Street in 1995 with JP Morgan. His passion for American small businesses is dedicated to his father, who passed away from COVID-19 in 2020. His father, Marco Madrid Jr., owned a welding business for over 4 decades. And next we have Mr. Paxton K. Baker. Mr. Baker is an American businessman, entrepreneur, and philanthropist who has served in the entertainment, music, sports, and production industry for over 30 years. Baker is a minority owner of the Washington Nationals Baseball Club and currently serves as chairman of the Washington Nationals Founding Partners Group. He is also a partner in the ownership group of the Washington Castles World Team Tennis League and a governing board member of the Global Sports Summit. In 2018, Baker launched the Washington, D.C. office of Liquid Souls, the agency behind the marketing and production of such blockbuster films as Black Panther and Fast and Furious 6. As managing partner, Baker is leading the expansion of the 17-year-old company into the political sports, and entertainment arenas. For 16 years, Baker served as the executive vice president and general manager of Centric, BET's complementary network targeting the African American and multicultural adults. Now we would like to additionally invite our guests to prepare to answer a few questions that we have prepared for National Small Business Week celebration of all of our award recipients. To get things started, I would like to ask my first question. And this question is addressed to all three of you. Given President Biden's commitment last year to increase equity for small disadvantaged businesses across the federal government and the economy, what are some of the new programs or initiatives that you and your teams have undertaken to make the federal and private marketplace more level playing field for Black, Latino, and minority-owned firms? I'll address this to you, Associate Administrator Hidalgo.
All right, thank you very much, Kathy. And it's so great to be with Mark and Paxton here today. It's such an honor and great moment for us to be together around National Small Business Week. I do want to also say, Kathy, we didn't get to talk about your background, but you have always been an inspiration to me as well. Kathy and I met in the White House when she served all 8 years in the West Wing in the Obama administration, working with Valerie Jarrett, who I was staffing at the time. This was President Obama's senior advisor. And so we're beyond thrilled to have Kathy here with us, who has just been a great source of advice and inspiration in our time here in the Biden administration. So, you know, this is such an important conversation because the president has, right out of the gate from day one of his administration, indicated his commitment to racial equity and support for underserved communities. And he signed an executive order on day one, January 2021. And in the executive order, they mentioned procurement in particular. And that is the crux of the focus of my office in government contracting and business development. And I think it might be the first time ever in U.S. history that a president has signed an executive order on racial equity in procurement. And the reason why that's so critical is because we are the biggest buyer. The U.S. federal government purchases around $560 billion every year. And so we have a big impact on wealth creation in the United States. We have a big impact on innovation and even on entrepreneurship. And so it's incumbent upon us to figure out how we tap into the talent and innovation around the United States. And the programs here that I oversee are so critical to that because we monitor how all 24 major agencies are performing in partnering, contracting with small businesses and also with minority, women, veteran businesses, place-based, which is called HubZone. So to me, it's so remarkable. And I remind myself that every day when I come into work, that we have programs like this in the United States in terms of just the values that we espouse as a country, because that's $130 billion a year that goes to small businesses and contract opportunities. That empowers not only businesses, but families, communities, folks across any given state or jurisdiction. That is critical. And then within that, we've got the Small Disadvantaged Business Goal. The president said very early on in June of last year, and commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, he said, I'm committing this administration to getting to 15% small disadvantaged business contracting. So that is basically billions, potentially tens of billions of additional contract dollars going to minority-owned businesses, disadvantaged businesses over the next 4 years. And that's the kind of impact that the president is seeking to have. And that's what we're working really hard, Administrator Guzman, Mark, and I, to achieve on behalf of the American people.
Okay, Mark, any comments?
Thank you. Thank you to the remarkable Kathy for getting us catalyzed here, and Bibi for your distinguished leadership. And I can't think of a better guest than Paxton that embodies the American dream of the what's possible when you have a big idea. At the bottom line for the SBAs, our mission is to help all Americans start, build, and grow businesses. All Americans. So equity definitely plays a part in this. Our administrator of the SBA, Isabella Casillas Guzman, always talks about our small businesses as the giants of our economy. And indeed, diversity is America's greatest economic development asset. And I submit for your consideration the overall greatest asset. And so we are definitely walking that talk under the bold leadership of Administrator Guzman. And as Bibi mentioned, President Biden, Vice President Harris are very serious about walking the talk also. And she mentioned some executive orders and priorities. So I couldn't be more excited to take the charge along with Bibi and all of our units at the SBA to break silos as one agency to advance equity. And we're doing that by being more customer focused and technology forward. When it comes to the Office of Entrepreneurial Development, consider us one of the primary educational and technical resources arms of the agency, but we're all one agency, so all units are contributing toward this endeavor in terms of education and technical assistance. And so through the American Rescue Plan, President Biden issued an edict for this nation to advance equity and level the playing field when it comes to small businesses. And we were charged with launching the Community Navigator pilot program. And what that is doing is building communities of trust building that starts on the ground, on the terrain level. I've always said it's best to fight a ground war when it comes to small businesses, understanding the terrain, understanding every undulation, understanding them fully. And that's our community navigators through our hub and spoke model that we have arranged. And literally, it's the translators, the tax pros. It's those during the pandemic that were wheeling around with the plexiglass, making things accessible, applications for PPP and the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and our Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Those are the community navigators that are building trust. Those are feeding up to 51 grantees that have economies of scale, marketing know-how, and know how to manage grants. And as Bibi mentioned, our largest grantees, they embody diversity. We have the U.S. Black Chambers, the U.S. Hispanic Chamber, the National Urban League. We have the Institute of Veterans and Military Families. We have the Local Initiative Service Corporation that is focusing on women entrepreneurs, U.S. PAC that is focusing on AAPI communities, and the IRC that is focusing on immigrant entrepreneurs. We're just so fortunate that we are servicing all with this endeavor and specifically looking at how we can close resource gaps. That is instrumental in how we operate. That is why we exist.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. What I would like to do is bring Mr. Baker into this conversation as well by asking a question. What is one piece of advice you would give to any newcomer to the small business landscape, especially Black and Latino entrepreneurs looking to get started? And remembering that this is our National Small Business Week, and we are looking for more small business to come into this marketplace. Mr. Baker, please.
So, Kathy, first, thank you for the opportunity to participate. And I'd like to thank Bibi, who I've been developing a good friendship with, and Mark, who I will be developing a good friendship with on the other side of today, for allowing me to come apart and participate. And I'm inspired by what I've heard. I've also been inspired by the president's mission to help and build minority businesses. I certainly am a beneficiary of that from the perspective of people caring and people giving an opportunity to minority and Latino businesses to begin, and Asian as well, to begin Asian and other to begin the opportunity to participate more in the government process. I have yet to do so. So from my end, this is a new opportunity to do so, and I'm really thrilled about the opportunity. And from my end, as far as participating in corporate America, I've had a long history with Viacom on the public side. And prior to that, I owned my own business which I ended up selling to Bob Johnson and Black Entertainment Television, who had been a client for 8 years. And then when I joined BET, a short space of time after that, it was purchased by Viacom, which is a public company, and I had an 18-year career there. So I've been an entrepreneur prior to joining corporate America, participating in corporate America for almost 20 years, and then coming back on the other side of it and being an entrepreneur, a small business entrepreneur on the other side of it. So seasoned in that regard, but I will say that the opportunities that I had to participate with corporate America certainly made me a better business person and gave me an opportunity to think bigger and to build scalability for my business. So had I not have had that experience, I certainly wouldn't be where I'm at right now. So from my end on having the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, small business entrepreneur, then to be a part of a multi-billion-dollar company and get 20 years of schooling, if you will, and getting my own master's in business from being a part of corporate America was integral in my growth. And I wouldn't be as far as I am as an entrepreneur had I not have had that experience. So government programs, which come along and give small businesses opportunities to really grow, to learn, to be trained, are integral in the opportunity for us to success and really have sustained long-term growth. My path was one of literally starting to do concerts in college at Temple University back in the mid 80s, and like literally like passionately growing from something that you love and experiencing growth from that and kind of getting to a top point, which for me was when I met executives from BET who came down in 1991 to the Aruba Jazz and Latin Music Festival. I literally, from straight out of college right into what I was doing, was growing step by step. It was one thing to another, to another, to another. It was integral, like literally, I go from Aruba to Amsterdam to Trinidad, and I'm growing 1, 2, 3, 4. But I got a chance to be honed and schooled and get through 5 through 15 or 5 through 20. And had I've only stayed as kind of a small business with the opportunity to grow and really be trained by other people who had more experience than I did, I don't know if I would have reached 25 or 30 or 50 or 100. So my advice would be one would certainly be open-minded. And also to be authentically who you are from a cultural perspective. Sometimes as minority businesses, we think we have to be like the general market to be successful. There are certainly lessons that the general market will teach you, which can be integral to you for long-term sustained growth. However, your authentic cultural self, that which makes you you, is something that you need to bring along with you to grow, or you won't really fully have the flavor of who you are as a person. You don't have to be like other people, but there's certainly things that you do that need to be kind of put inside of your package to help you grow. A lot of people talk about hip hop flavor, which has now become like partly certainly one of the great exports of America. It's been a mixture of things. And so Black culture, Latino culture, urban inner city culture mixed with other things, which make it that much better and gives it a flavor. In New Orleans, they would call it gumbo. So certainly to me, be authentically true to who you are. And then along with that, relationships to me are an integral part of anything that you do along the way. Being open-minded, building those relationships, those are the things that you bring in the door with you when the opportunities present themselves. And then lastly, I would kind of add along with that would be the volunteer piece, which to me has been integral over the course of my career, has been to volunteer and to give of myself and to do more than just what was expected of me. So those would be just a few kind of snippets, if you will, that I would add in and build as much goodwill as you can along the way, and be aware of what you bring into the door when you walk into a room.
Thank you so much for that. I would be remiss if I did not indicate that in 2014, Miss Hidalgo and her brother Patrick Hidalgo co-founded Future Partners, a minority business strategy, and created a model for how to facilitate significant opportunities for both. What I would like to do is ask you if you could tell us more about Future Partners and provide your advice on what you would give to newcomers to the small business landscape. Bibi?
Well, first of all, it was so inspiring to hear your answer, Paxton. I mean, there's just admiration everywhere here in how you navigate and charted your career, but not only that, your emphasis on always giving back is really powerful. And I think it's in many ways a guidepost for the work that we're doing here in the Small Business Administration. Patrick and I realized coming out of the Obama administration that he had a lot of the corporate relationships. I had the technical know-how on contracting, and we pulled together our resources and started our company and advised corporations on their strategy in connecting with minority-owned businesses, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses. And you know, as you mentioned, Kathy, I lost my brother, my business partner, my little brother, my best friend, at the beginning of the pandemic. And ultimately, thereafter, once the president was elected, I led the government contracting piece of the agency review team. And I wasn't certain about whether to come in, but I knew that from the experiences that Patrick and I had running our company, there was a perspective there that was so critical to figure out how we can engage more underserved businesses in the federal government. And I will say that there is a real concerted effort within the private sector to engage with more businesses. But as we saw in the work that we did, what's really key is engaging the buyer workforce in a company, as it is in the federal government. And you know, here in the federal government, we have 40,000 acquisition officers. They have a huge impact on how we grow as a country. And the same goes for the corporate sector. You know, collectively, if you just pulled the Fortune 500 together, we figured Patrick used to do these back of the envelope calculations all the time because he was so passionate, in particular, about corporate sector business and contracting. And we figured it was somewhere on the order of about 4 trillion at least in contracting domestically among the Fortune 500 on an annual basis. So even though the government is the biggest buyer, single buyer, there, you know, this is where contracting is where most of the wealth is created in this country. And that's why we want to be able to break down those barriers of how you actually become a vendor and a business partner with the federal government. And as I heard Paxton speaking, the biggest question that came to my mind, Kathy, if you don't mind me asking him, is what in your work with the private sector, what do you think could have helped and what we can do now as members of the Biden administration to pull down the veneer of complexity of government contracting and of government programs to make sure that we are doing all we can to connect with America's entrepreneurs. What do you think would be most helpful from that standpoint, Paxton, as you hear about the work that Mark is overseeing, which is just extraordinary and game-changing, and the work that we're doing here in government contracting to create more access? What do you think that we could do that would make the programs and the support systems we have more accessible and more broadly?
Very good question, Bibi. And my condolences on the loss of your brother, Mark. I heard the same thing earlier in the introduction with the loss of your father. I've lost my sister last year as well, and also a number of friends due to COVID. And it's been overwhelmingly tough to kind of maneuver and pass through it, touchingly so. So forgive me for choking up a little bit there in that regard. I think sometimes when programs roll down, you hear about them and you hear about them on the news, but they don't necessarily become real to your community. And so if from the government's end of either working through certainly chambers of commerce, I'm a member of the DC Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a member of the Economic Club of Washington, DC, and through chambers and various other either social opportunities or doing programs either through local news or NPR, things like that, to let small businesses know about what the opportunities are, because sometimes things seem to be so far reaching and so far away from you that you don't necessarily think, wow, I could actually apply for that program and benefit from it. During COVID, the small business loans, of which I certainly applied, which were overwhelmingly helpful. And my company is a very small business, and sometimes like $30,000-$40,000 could make a real difference. Certainly going through COVID, those were like critical dollars on helping to get a business through COVID. Like I was fearful at the beginning of the pandemic, not knowing necessarily how I was going to maneuver. A lot of the business that we have are event driven. And when all the events shut down, it was a very fearful period of time where you're wondering, and for my, in some situations, clients that you'd have for 3 years, and they let you know that those events were going to be canceled. And so you're looking at your projection screen of projected revenue for the year, and at one point for myself, like 3/4 of that was shut down. And if it weren't for government programs to be helpful to help me get through it, it was like literally you were in fear on how am I going to be able to survive. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, certainly you want to have savings for yourself out there, and you're fortunate enough in some situations, certainly not one, because you've published probably some of the statistics on the number for African American businesses was about 40% of businesses that did not make it through COVID, because in many situations like that, those businesses did not have money to sustain themselves for a week or two of being able to meet payroll before they were unfortunately having to shut down, and many of them didn't return. So I would say that from an awareness perspective, as much as possible from an information flow of getting to small businesses where they are, and working through city agencies a lot of times to make some of this information available as to how they can benefit from it. I would suggest that for starters, but would be glad to put together a plan, by the way, for you. Would be glad to put together a plan on how to effectively help do that, because that's part of what our company does, is by way of marketing and advertising. So, in all seriousness, certainly I would start with certainly chambers. That's an easy one. And many, right through the SBA Latino program that I participated in with you, I met a lot of Latino companies that work through the Chamber of Commerce. I remember one of them was the state of Illinois Latino Chamber, and various other people who I met that day. So facilitating workshops where small businesses get an opportunity to come in to participate, that's integral. And I'm really thankful that those programs exist and have every desire to participate in more of them. Just to veer for 1 second, if I could answer a question that you didn't ask me, and that was like the biggest question I get asked, and I've been asked this literally without exaggeration across the world, is how did I get the opportunity to become part owner of the Washington Nationals Baseball Club?
Thank you. That's what's on everyone's mind here.
That one, believe it or not, my dentist introduced me to the Lerner family. And my dentist, Dr. Ronnie Rosenberg, introduced me to the Lerner family, who he did their teeth. But the reason that the opportunity existed was because Commissioner Bud Selig, at then time the commissioner of Major League Baseball, put a mandate that whoever was able to, whatever group that came together to purchase the Washington Nationals, which were the former Montreal Expos, had to have significant minority participation in the ownership group. And we had and have Latino and African American ownerships that benefited from that opportunity. And had the commissioner not put his foot down and said, whoever buys this ball club in the nation's capital, which is a pretty integrated city, has to be integrated in the ownership group, we would not have had the opportunity to participate. That literally was like, if that mandate had not been handed down, there's no way that Black and Latino people, people of color, would have had the opportunity to participate in the ownership group for the baseball club, had the commissioner not have said this is mandatory to whoever forms the group to happen, because there's a lot of wealth out there, as each of you are intricately, aware of. There's a lot of wealth, but very little of it is in our communities. And so if we're suddenly going to get the opportunity to start becoming in big boy doors, big boy, big girl doors, where you're now sitting at a table of people who are billionaires, what other opportunities are you going to get if somebody doesn't put their foot down and say, hey, bring some people of color, bring some women inside of this door? If someone doesn't do it, then normally, just under normal circumstances, it doesn't happen.
That's
And
right.
so my success in that regard of having that opportunity would never have come about had someone not have put the foot down and said, give people of color the opportunity to participate. So when you talk about the president's mission and putting his foot down on that, if those things don't happen, and the people much like yourselves don't then go about and participate to make it happen, it will never happen into and of itself.
That's really, it's so powerful, Paxton. I mean, one, it means that we should go get our teeth cleaned every 6 months, I realize. But two, it's just like you said, if it comes from the top, then people need to listen. In this case, it's the deal that was made, and that opened up all kinds of doors for you. You remind me of this moment when my brother was in the White House and he had to put together a meeting of CEOs for President Obama, and it was going to be whoever could fit in the Roosevelt room in the West Wing. And he said, the problem is that we don't see the diversity among the Fortune 500 CEOs. So I'm not sure what to do, because if I want to have a diverse table, it's not reflected. And I said to him, well, Patrick, what about going to the EVP? And if you don't see it in the EVPs, then go to the VPs. But, you can make sure that they're seated at the table, even if they don't have that CEO title. And that's exactly what he did. He made sure on that day, about the meeting of the fiscal cliff, that there were Black women at the table, that there were Latinos, and that there were, major corporate CEOs. And they got to sit there with the President of the United States, with Mrs. Jarrett, and with all the other leaders at that moment in history. But you have to carve out that space, because if you just go to, the who is already in the ball club, you're going to limit yourself. And it's like, how do you develop that criteria is what's so critical. I see Mark shaking his head. I'm sure he's got some thoughts here.
Well, I'm just thrilled. We need to catalyze more Paxtons is the bottom line. And you've said you've had so many pearls of wisdom here, including getting your teeth cleaned, but also you were bold enough to take that opportunity. You were bold enough to take that opportunity. And so around here, we also want to say, go to SBA.gov. SBA.gov. Take 10 undistracted moments to find out the opportunities that could be available for you. Access to capital, access to people and networks. I love what you said, Paxton, earlier. You said, I've been given the opportunity to go pursue something that I'm passionate about, something that I love. And what we're trying to do is equip. We're trying to inform, equip, empower, and inspire so that passion can be coupled with resources that create sustainability. At the end of the day, small businesses employ almost half of America's workforce. And when we see the rising rates of entrepreneurship from diverse groups, then not only are we integrating the fabric of this of society, but we're also favorably economically contributing. And so it's a win-win. It's not only the right thing to do, it makes all the business sense in the world.
Agreed.
Great. Well, thank you all. As we approach our final question, I just would like to say it's so great to have all you phenomenal leaders to help support our National Small Business Week of celebrations. But in one last question here, I would like to address it to Mr. Baker. What inspired you to get into this line of work of service as an entrepreneur?
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to spend some time. So unfortunately, nowhere near as much time I would like to today with everybody on the panel. And Mark and Bibi, I look forward to continuing to build relationship. Uh, and Kathy, I'd like to answer your question, but I guess first off, I'd like to kind of just say, like when Mark talked about SBA.gov,
Mhm.
and like for my own life, on the things I encourage young people to do. I would just add, on a voluntary basis, I'm chairman of the U.S. Congress's official charity, and that's the U.S. Congressional Award, congressionalaward.org, for young people across the nation, ages 13 to 24, to earn a congressional medal through volunteerism and personal development, physical fitness, and outward bound travel. It's Congress's official charity for young people, congressionalaward.org. I'll repeat SBA.gov again. But the reason I'm saying all this is uh, I early on, when I became the general manager of BT Second Network Centric, and sold my company to a public company and became president of what had been a small entrepreneurial company, PKB Arts and Entertainment Productions. And suddenly I was president of BT Event Productions and had more resources than I would have ever thought available to me. One is for small businesses and small business owners and entrepreneurs to, one, believe that it can happen to you and for you. And for myself, for the times early on, and still sometimes as I pinch myself, having access to the owner suite at Nationals Ballpark, and full access to be able to work through all the baseball games that happen in Washington, and also travel with the team on the road. Uh, I've pinched myself multiple times because as a younger person, I wouldn't necessarily thought that that might be possible, but
Yes.
to actually believe that it could be possible for you. And from my end, on walking in the door of trying to bring others along with you, which to me is critical to me, on the first thing I get into a room is, how can I integrate that room? How can I not be the only one? The Global Sports Summit is sports owners across the world.
Mhm.
And when I came in, I was the only person of color that walked in the room. And so for me, it's a responsibility as a person of color to bring others in with me. And I would add to it that by way of adding to your friendships, that's what you're building from. You're building from your friendships. So to me, the importance of having Latino friends, of having Asian friends, and literally my friend group is Jewish, white, Italian, white, like it's across the board. And for many friends, originally at one point, I was their only Black friend. And so for me, of like introducing other people to it and not trying to be the only one, but how can I bring others along with me? Not just from a race perspective, but also from a sex perspective, of having female friends and a wide array of that, and LGBTQ friends, and broadening my group of people who I know and bringing them along with me. I'm not trying to be the only one. I'm not trying to be the only person of color who's successful. So how can I bring others in the door with me? And I would just come back, Kathy, specifically to say of believing something is possible. So what this panel is about today for entrepreneurs and business owners is giving you opportunities of believing that something is possible. And so take the time to go to SBA.gov. Also take the time to register to vote, because that's where the jury pools come from the whole thing about a jury of your peers. It comes from being registered to vote. So the critical importance of those types of things, they make a difference. And so believing something is possible for you, then taking the time to actually go and log on to the website to, see what is on SBA.gov. Like, how do I get to that? What's there for me? What are the opportunities of believing that that's possible? My guru was Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. At the time I first read it, I was a 17-year-old high school dropout.
Mhm.
I dropped out of high school 3 times before I was able to really get my life in gear. And I went to community college and took advantage of grants and loans to a student who had a hard time, who was severe ADHD, also had dyslexia. And before I was able to get my life together. So if it was not for government programs and things like community colleges, I would not be on this panel talking with you today, because I would not have succeeded. So believe things are possible, and then take the time to go about actually fundamentally following through to do it and believing that those successes could happen for yourself.
Well, thank you all once again for joining us. What a wonderful, wonderful panel. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you for the opportunity. SBA.gov.
Yes,
Thank you.
thanks so much, Kathy, for bringing us all together this way. It's such a wonderful conversation. I leave here so much more inspired. Even though it says Sal Di Francesco. So when you mentioned Paxton Italians, we got a great Italian here in the room, not Kathy, but next to me over here. So great plug. And I'm just, every time I spend time with you, Paxton, I learn so much. So I appreciate it. You inspire us and help us to remember how important this work is and achieving the president's goals, because it's going to make a difference for our country and for our future. So thank you. And Mark, of course, he is a great joy to work with every single day. So Mark, any final thoughts?
It's possible. The best is yet to come. And when we have the living proof in Paxton, I think that's all you need to know, that it is possible and there's resources to guide you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.